On that day, a majestic dragon ascended determinedly through the vast, cloud-streaked sky, marking the start of an epic tale. A massive wyvern circled menacingly in the stormy sky, casting an ominous shadow over the world below. A large, powerful creature soars high above the rugged, sunlit landscape, appearing freer than anything ever witnessed. A large, intimidating man entered the room with commanding authority, his imposing presence closely followed by a serious, alert boy who watched the scene unfold with wary caution. Amidst the blurred, dramatic background, the focus narrows to a small object on the ground, as the narrator reflects that this alone was the reason behind their actions. Amidst the grim aftermath, the resolute man stands with blood splattered across his face and cloak, his determined posture revealing his endurance through a violent ordeal. As a bloodied man gazes resolutely at the dragon soaring majestically above, the legacy of the great magical house lingers in the air, filling the moment with both awe and solemnity. Having decided to retire as a troubleshooter for one compelling reason, he clenched his bandaged fist beneath the dramatic light, his determination unwavering. A menacing crow, its eyes glowing ominously as it flaps its wings, seems to issue a chilling warning that only one remains. As storm clouds gather, a flock of birds soars through the darkened sky, their flight underscored by an ominous red symbol below. With a smug glint in his eyes, the man confronted his opponent by revealing that he had been aware of the hidden skills all along, gripping the crackling blue lightning around his neck as the atmosphere grew intense. Surrounded by glowing magical sigils and blue energy, the confident young man demonstrated an extraordinary power that seemed far beyond what anyone expected from a mere troubleshooter. Stepping forward with a dominant presence, the man interrupted to assert that he would be the one asking the questions, decisively taking control of the tense conversation. Examining the glowing, ornate book with intense focus, the young man wondered aloud if it was indeed a magic tome. Despite the crackling blue electricity tightening around his throat, the man resisted the pain and reluctantly admitted his answer. On the cracked, desolate ground, the smug man taunted that it was laughable to think they had all assembled just to handle a single hunting dog, sneering that only someone from house would attract a pack, while the defiant MC stood his ground, radiating blue energy amid the tense confrontation. Under the dramatic sky, the man questioned the uncertain protagonist about how to use the sword, prompting the protagonist to admit hesitantly that he did not know. Reflecting on the situation, the narrator mused that if had known the truth, he never would have hidden it away in the dusty basement. Despite not knowing how to use it, the determined young man clutched the magical book tightly, wary of how far he had already been pursued for its sake. With tense determination, the young man demanded that the magic tome be handed over, asserting that its value justified his claim. With a smug confidence, the man proposed that he would appeal to the head for mercy and even suggested that the other might be allowed to return as a troubleshooter, all while his captive, unfazed, met the offer with a defiant smile. As blue magical energy crackled in his hands, the confident man questioned with a hint of challenge what authority a troubleshooter manager could possibly have to act in this situation, causing the onlooker to recoil in shock. In the midst of a desolate, tension-filled landscape, the dominant and composed interrogator calmly restrained his defiant captive with glowing magical energy, questioning if he had any last words, while the captive, struggling and furious, cursed him before the interrogator noted with cold admiration that his opponent had finally accepted his true identity. As a mysterious figure advanced menacingly with a cane, the startled man braced himself in alarm, tension crackling in the air between them. A determined young man, his expression intense, activates a glowing magical circle as he prepares to unleash a dangerous and powerful spell. As the intimidating man unleashed a sinister red aura, he remarked with confident satisfaction on the observer's sharp instincts, implying that only those with such a menacing presence could truly understand the danger before them. With a composed air, the man confidently introduced himself as, his hand gripping the cane in a display of formal authority. A sharply dressed, imposing man radiated confidence as he was introduced as the head of house from the eastern continent, his presence commanding the room with intense authority. A confident man, maintaining a calm demeanor, requested the tome from the wary young man and explained that they would discuss matters further afterward, noting that he had worked as a troubleshooter for over a decade. After spending half a lifetime alongside, the sense of anticipation builds as this moment marks the narrator's very first encounter with the head. House stood triumphant as its members beneath their grand banner, each exuding pride and unity as the top magical family of the Eastern continent. The mysterious figure stands imposingly in the shadows, as the narration wonders what kind of man could possess the unparalleled power and reputation of the strongest mage in history. Beneath the dark, foreboding sky, the mysterious man stood with a confident, almost smug smile, his intent clear in the shadowy atmosphere. The protagonist inwardly expressed his annoyance, while the other man, puzzled by this reaction, questioned what was happening. In a desolate landscape, confronted the masked man while holding a glowing magical book, mockingly accusing him of being shameless for trying to take someone else's hard-earned loot. With a smug expression, the overconfident man scoffed at his opponent, laughing off the threat in a mocking tone. On the dark, desolate battlefield, as energy radiated from the confident fighter's hand, his defiant adversary faced him with a taunting laugh, mocking the tension of their powerful standoff. As tension thickened in the air, the young man anxiously reflected that eating the wyvern might have been a mistake, especially now that he faced the overwhelming aura of the head and realized just how unlucky he was. In that moment, an overwhelming sense of awe settled in, as someone silently recognized the unparalleled magical power before them. With a menacing glare, the figure delivered a chilling ultimatum, stating that although it would be easier to kill and reclaim the tome, he would instead cut to the chase, his words punctuated by the forceful strike that cracked the ground beneath him. With a confident glint in his eyes, the man issued a menacing ultimatum, insisting that they return under his protection and surrender the tome, promising to overlook their past actions if his demands were met. Confronting the stoic MC with a contemptuous glare, the man challenged his opponent's origins and abilities, remarking that while the MC's talent was undeniable, he considered him nothing more than a stray from the gray zone who had mastered techniques fit only for troubleshooters. In a dramatic, off-field moment, a figure appraised the young man's hidden talents, marveling at his skill and wondering aloud how high he might soar with House supporting him, while the composed youth stood amidst the swirling blue aura. As the blue-eyed young man stared intently upward, someone posed a weighty question about how far could ascend with him as their chosen weapon, leaving him both contemplative and determined. Amidst the backdrop of a lone bird soaring through dramatic, cloudy skies, someone passionately urged their companion to stand with them, promising that together they would elevate to greatness and secure their own place in history. As a dragon silhouette soared through the dark, swirling clouds, an urgent command echoed for it to return to, imbuing the scene with an ominous sense of summoning. With tension hanging in the air, the character finally relented, and though resistant, agreed in a resigned tone that he would return the tome. With an air of confidence, the authoritative man raised his hand and asserted that before they could proceed, he had one condition to state. With unwavering confidence, the young man demanded that he be given the head seat in exchange for even considering the offer, while the composed man below him listened without betraying his thoughts. As energy surged around his glowing fist, the determined man accused his opponent of having watched the fight all along. In a sudden surge of agony, the man was electrocuted by the collar and let out a tortured scream as pain overwhelmed him. As the determined young man gathered a surge of magical energy, he challenged his opponent by asking if he could even keep track of all the lives lost to this deadly power, while the menacing figure loomed ominously behind him. Smirking menacingly beneath the dark, swirling sky, the calm and intimidating man let out a low, ominous chuckle that hinted at his smug confidence. Standing over the collapsed man, the calm and authoritative figure warned in a threatening tone that this was how things would unfold, and that the one on the ground might not survive, while a third man watched the tense confrontation from a distance with curiosity. Lost in anxious thought, the male character silently admitted to himself that the other person's point was valid, his tense expression betraying his inner turmoil. With fierce determination, the young man slammed his foot down onto the wooden floor, his decisive action echoing through the tense atmosphere. With defiant intensity, the confident protagonist unleashed a surge of magical energy at his surprised opponent, fiercely declaring his unwavering support. Suddenly, a surge of blue and red energy bursts forth as opposing forces collide in a blinding display of power. With tension crackling in the air, the cocky man taunted his opponent by insisting that one could only know whose power was greater by measuring it directly, then declared with confident bravado that it was time to humble him, while his determined rival prepared to respond with escalating force. With a determined expression, the MC thrust his glowing hand forward, unleashing a surge of magic as a bright red sigil erupted in the air, and someone cried out in surprise. From above, the commanding figure unleashed a torrent of destructive energy, forcing the desperate man below to brace himself against the overwhelming onslaught. With fierce determination blazing in his eyes, the red-haired protagonist launched himself forward, unleashing a powerful attack as dynamic energy crackled around him. A determined young man, amazed by the formidable strength before him, rushed forward to test the head of seemingly flawless defense, realizing with awe that this was what it truly meant to bear such a title. With a burst of confidence, the aggressive man taunted his opponent for being distracted, as he delivered a powerful, glowing punch that left the other stunned and reeling. The man, his expression confident and confrontational, argued assertively that while some things require measurement, there are others one simply knows instinctively. With unwavering determination, the male mage unleashes a surge of magic, a vibrant red spell circle illuminating the scene as he channels his power. With unwavering resolve, the male character looked upward through the intense light, and confidently remarked that the distance between them mirrored the very gap now standing in their way. Suddenly, a colossal burst of flames erupts, engulfing everything in a chaotic inferno, and leaving the fate of those within completely obscured. Standing confidently before the battered man pinned against the shattered wall by a surge of energy, the dominant figure insisted he had only roughed him up and demanded to know if he was now ready to talk. Amid the looming, jagged cliffs, the man in the fur-lined cloak stands resolute, his wary gaze fixed on the unsettling symbols swirling in the stormy sky as he confronts an unknown presence. In a tense standoff, the confident man provocatively suggested he could still bow his head and return to shadow, while the skeptical protagonist challenged the sincerity of this offer, making it clear he did not trust a word of it. With a defiant glare, the blue-haired young man unleashed a surge of magical energy, shouting that there was no way anyone would believe him. In a surge of defiance, the blue-haired figure channeled crackling lightning through glowing magic circles, declaring with fierce determination that he would no longer tolerate being treated poorly. Suddenly, a colossal bolt of blue lightning tears through the sky and crashes into the ground, violently splitting the earth with overwhelming force. With electricity crackling around him, the man defiantly rejected the idea of returning to captivity, insisting that no matter how luxurious it seemed, it remained nothing more than a gilded cage. With a sneer of disdain, the man pinned the sword to the ground and mocked his defeated opponent, making it clear how little he thought of their efforts. Suddenly, within a glowing magic circle, the commanding man unleashed a massive, red magical attack, his determination radiating through the explosive scene. At the center of a massive, glowing magical circle, the man stood determined as he unleashed a powerful spell, the air crackling with intense red energy. Radiating an intense red energy, the man confidently demonstrated his overwhelming power, declaring to the amazed onlooker that he would show just how immense his abilities truly were. Amidst the swirling red magical circles, the enraged protagonist confronted his enemy, furiously shouting an insult as he unleashed a powerful spell. Reflecting in the darkness, the reason behind past actions becomes clear. That day, as the weary young man gazed emptily at the sky, he found himself lost in wistful recollection of a pivotal moment. Amidst the ominous sky, a solitary dragon emerges from the swirling darkness, its presence heralding a shift in the unfolding events. Suddenly, the vision overwhelmed him as blood and an eerie red light poured from his eyes, revealing the ominous reason he had looked up that day. Towering over the wounded figure on the blood-stained ground, the dominant man acknowledged with a hint of impressed detachment that, although he had expected his opponent to die, he was surprised to see him endure. Amidst the smoke and blood of the aftermath, the young man faced his adversary with defiance, as someone challenged him to acknowledge the difference in their power. Amidst the smoky, cratered battlefield, the overpowered man, still seated and visibly amazed, acknowledged to his dominant and unfazed opponent that he possessed incredible strength. In a tense confrontation, the injured yet defiant young man demanded to know if he was expected to be a troubleshooter again, while the calm, calculating older man coolly clarified that he had not made such a request. Amid the tense atmosphere, the young man was taken aback when someone proposed that he should become the head of the family, leaving him visibly shocked by the unexpected responsibility thrust upon him. House, recognized as the most formidable magical clan of the Eastern continent, possesses enough power to rival the throne itself. Under a stormy sky, the powerful leader stood tall in his red cloak, his voice ringing with indignation as he demanded to know why he should be forced to swear loyalty as a subordinate to another family. With a smug glint in his eyes, the cunning MC confronted his adversary while channeling power, suggesting that he knew the hidden motive had been the true goal all along. Under a stormy, ominous sky, the confident man in the fur-collared coat asserted that his companion was undervaluing himself, then made it clear he desired both the person's allegiance and the mysterious tome. Amid the ominous mountain scenery, the focused protagonist sat on the ground engrossed in his book, while the calm, imposing man confronted him with a cane, tension simmering between them. With a confident air, the young man presented the mystical book, affirming that the other had made the right choice. Beneath stormy skies, a sinister man stretched out his hand with a smug grin, confidently reaching for the glowing magical book as an ominous tension filled the air. In a dramatic, ominous moment, the commanding man offered the glowing magical artifact to the kneeling MC, who accepted it with a determined expression, as the narrator reflected that all that remained was the glory of standing with. As the overbearing man sternly demanded to know what was happening, the injured protagonist, channeling a defiant surge of glowing purple energy, retorted that he was simply following the man's earlier warning about the risk of everything being reduced to ashes. With a fierce glare against the ominous red backdrop, the defiant man angrily threatened his opponent that he would never get an easy death, only to be abruptly interrupted as the unyielding protagonist authoritatively demanded that he be quiet and listen. Despite his injuries, the man resolutely explained that he had never sought wealth from his work as a troubleshooter, yet he confessed that he kept the magical artifact precisely because it was connected to money. With a piercing, serious gaze, the man questioned his companion in a tense voice, asking if they had ever heard rumors about the troubleshooter who was devoured by his young master. In a tense atmosphere, the haunted protagonist revealed to the looming figure that forbidden magic had led to his teammate's demise, and added that had concealed the truth. As the tense confrontation unfolded beside the eerie blue flame, the authoritative man fixed his gaze on the wounded protagonist and demanded to know if everything had been driven by a desire for revenge. Struggling to speak through his pain, the young man desperately tried to express what he was feeling, his intense blue eye filled with determination despite the blood splatter. As the dramatic sky brightens with beams of light piercing through the parted clouds, someone reflects that they simply wanted to ensure others received what they desired, their resolve evident in the moment. With a sinister glint in his eye and blood splattered across his face, the scheming man remarked darkly that carrying out his plan would require an enormous amount of money, hinting at even deeper motives. With a defiant glint in his eyes, the battle-hardened young man resolved that he would retire for good, firmly rejecting any possibility of returning to the life he once knew. In the midst of a dramatic, cloud-filled landscape, the resolute man turned away and with a determined snap of his fingers, declared that his words should be considered his last. His prized blue flame, a mystical fire that never dies out, swirls dramatically in the man's hand as he summons its ominous glow in the darkness. With supernatural energy swirling around him, the cold and resolute man threatened his adversary vengefully, warning that he would be left to suffer and regret his choice completely. Fueled by furious determination, the young man defiantly declared that he refused to feel any regret. Standing alone amidst swirling blue energy in the void, the resolute man contemplated his fate and defiantly resolved that he would rather return to the perilous gray zone, or even embrace death, than submit to being subordinate. With an icy, triumphant smile, the male character unleashed a menacing laugh that radiated ominous, sinister confidence. Unleashing a surge of overwhelming energy, the man erupted with ecstatic laughter as he exclaimed that he had not felt this free in ages. Amidst the surging blue-white energy, an unseen presence accepted the inevitability of their own demise with quiet resignation, reflecting that although escape seemed impossible, they felt no regrets and wondered wistfully about the possibility of another life. Glowing with intense blue energy and his expression fierce, the young man vowed inwardly that he would finally claim his freedom and exact proper revenge. As the wind gathers ominously, abstract energy swirls across the scene, creating a foreboding atmosphere. Amidst a surge of swirling blue energy and dramatic light, the young man stood before the massive rock, channeling newfound power with a look of astonished awe. Suddenly, as time halted and blue energy crackled around him, the stunned protagonist exclaimed in disbelief that everything had just stopped, while the confused onlooker stared at the extraordinary scene. As the mystical energy coiled around the glowing tome, the awestruck protagonist reached out to grasp it, wondering aloud if this was indeed the legendary book they had been searching for. With unwavering resolve, the young man unleashed a surge of blue energy as he reached toward the glowing, floating book, his determination intensifying the charged atmosphere. Amid the swirling energy, the battered yet resolute hero channels his strength, activating a powerful magical ability as glowing circles flare across his wounded body. Suddenly confronted by a radiant, glowing sigil that filled the air with mysterious light, the protagonist reacted in shock, demanding to know what was happening. Caught off guard, the main character reacted with surprise as he received an unexpected coin dropped into his outstretched bag. Stunned and gasping for breath, the boy clutched his chest in disbelief as he tried to process that he had just been burning to death. A young man, disoriented and anxious, sensed something was wrong as he wondered to himself where he could possibly be in the deserted, unfamiliar medieval town. As the protagonist's hands reached toward the bowl of coins on the ground, he reflected with a sense of nostalgia that the scene felt eerily familiar, as if he had somehow returned to his past. Suddenly, the male character's eyes widened in surprise, as he exclaimed inwardly that he had just remembered something important. Reflecting somberly, the main character realized that he was back in the gray zone, the very place where he had once begged for survival each day before becoming a troubleshooter. Stunned and clutching his chest in disbelief, the young man realized with shock that he had somehow traveled back in time. Bright sunlight bathes the old-style town in a serene calm, as the gentle sound of a breeze and distant murmurs create an atmosphere of peaceful tranquility. Kneeling by the vivid green river and bathed in an eerie glow, the stunned young man tried to comprehend the bewildering scene before him, wondering aloud what could have possibly transpired. Staring into the enigmatic, shimmering surface, the boy realized with astonishment that he was looking at a younger version of himself, struggling to comprehend how he had been regressed to this earlier age. Frustrated, the young man reflected that despite traveling back in time, the hated fire mark still burned on his chest, its persistence a constant source of irritation. Sitting alone on the sunlit grass with mystical energy swirling around him, the boy reflected with intrigue that, although he could not explain how, the magic tome had undeniably caused something extraordinary to happen. The mysterious glow of the ornate magic tome within the shimmering circle underscored its immense significance, as it became clear that its power was great enough to draw even the normally indifferent family head to intervene personally. The young man, standing confidently with his arms crossed in the warm light, reflected contentedly on the recent events, thinking that it seemed like a good thing after all. Kneeling by the grassy, sewage-filled canal, the young man assessed his surroundings with a mixture of surprise and realization, convincing himself that the vividness and the pungent stench made it impossible for this to be a dream, and concluded he was undeniably alive. With a surge of determination, the young man declared that he was not merely surviving as he raised his glowing arm, manifesting his newfound power beneath the sunlit sky. With unwavering confidence, the young man pumped his fist and proclaimed that this triumphant morning felt so promising. He believed anything he attempted would succeed. As the glowing green light illuminates his raised fist, the MC reflects with determination, questioning inwardly what it truly means to succeed. The young man sat cross-legged on the grass, thoughtfully recalling that he had once dreamed while holding a glowing orb tightly in his hands. As the fiery sunset bathed the camp in warm light, the two men paused in quiet reflection, with the determined leader recalling that not only was this his own cherished dream, but it had also been the aspiration of his steadfast comrades. With a determined look, the young man addressed Aster directly, clarifying that he now recognized him by name and signaling a shift in their relationship. As the sun set over the barren landscape, the young man reflected somberly on his harsh upbringing in the gray zone, recalling that he and others were born with nothing, never able to dress well, eat well, or receive an education, and now wondered which deprivation had been the most painful. As the two men shared a quiet moment overlooking the sunset, the weary man explained somberly that their current predicament was caused by something deeper than hunger alone. As the two men lingered in the fading sunlight, one asked pensively what had pulled their lives into such hardship, while the other responded with calm acceptance, remarking that he had come to terms with their situation. Facing the off-panel figure with clear anxiety, the man reluctantly agreed to talk, admitting to himself that the other's intimidating glare had pressured him into compliance. As the dramatic sunrise filled the sky with light and falling leaves, the realization settled in that not having access to education had been the most painful hardship of all. As the two men quietly watched the sunset from the grassy hill, the main character begins to speak pensively about the prospect of his own retirement, prompting his calm companion to listen in reflective silence. With a sly smile and an air of confidence, the man hinted that he was about to make a cunning request, signaling a pivotal shift in the conversation. Sitting confidently on the sunlit grass, the young man looked upward with determination as he announced his dream of building a library. It was a place where anyone, regardless of wealth, status, or gender, could freely gather to read books together. With unwavering resolve, the young man declared to himself that he wished to push even further, determinedly reaching upward as ambition filled his gaze. The young man, inspired by his own boundless imagination, explained that he wanted to build a tower simply because he liked tall things, insisting that the location was unimportant and that he would fill it with any kind of book. With a manic gleam in his eyes, the young man revealed his unhinged plan to place a secret manual at the front entrance so that even outcasts and those of low birth could easily obtain a copy. With an air of optimism, the knowledgeable mentor explained to the eager boy that the book, marked with the crest, would contain the secret techniques their family valued above all else, sparking the boy's excitement as he listened intently. Eager and hungry, the boy held the ornate book with the dark emblem and admitted that just thinking about it made his mouth water. Beneath a vast blue sky scattered with clouds, a quiet, pensive mood settles as the lingering thought arises of how to acquire the elusive manual. With a smug smile, the clever young man assured himself that any consequences could be left for his future self, confidently plotting to spread his manual far and wide, certain that his targets would be delighted by it. In a sudden, explosive moment, the furious man delivered a powerful slap to the stunned protagonist, furiously declaring that he had reached his limit. A furious man kicked the fallen protagonist, shouting in a rage that he had finally found him after searching, while the protagonist cried out helplessly from the ground. Furiously, the silver-haired boy lashed out with a kick at the cowering student, demanding to know if he had been hiding while his seat was being saved, and threatening him in his anger. Despite the sudden ambush, the battle-hardened man braced himself with determination, internally questioning the attacker's identity and reassuring himself that, as a veteran troubleshooter who had survived countless battles except aerial warfare, he was prepared to face this new threat. In a sudden burst of intensity, the aggressive man attempted a powerful kick, only to be stopped mid-attack by the composed protagonist, who calmly remarked that his opponent had struck him 7 times, while the aggressor expressed surprise at being blocked. In a surge of defiance, the battered boy retaliated with a powerful punch and declared with fierce determination that if he had received blows, he would repay them 70-fold. Gritting his teeth, the young man pushed through the searing pain, his labored breaths betraying both agony and determination. In a sudden, intense moment, the young man drove his fist forcefully into his stunned opponent's torso, leaving the other man to gasp in disbelief and confusion at the unexpected blow. The young man, astonished, stared at his clenched fist as he wondered aloud why it was glowing, unable to comprehend the mysterious power suddenly coursing through him. After landed a decisive punch, the furious man shouted in outrage, demanding to know if had really dared to strike him and expressing his disbelief with a frustrated scoff. Furious, the aggressive man retaliated by forcefully kicking the other, furiously demanding to know if a punk like him had really dared to hit him, and questioning his sanity as the overpowered victim crashed to the ground in distress. Clutching his bandaged side in agony, the young man endures not only the searing pain of his wounds, but an even deeper ache within his heart. With a surge of assertive energy, the man forcefully pressed his foot down, crushing the small rock on the grass and heightening the tense atmosphere. Startled by an unexpected shock, the young man stumbled backward and exclaimed in confusion, clearly taken off guard by whatever had just occurred. Spotting an opening as a burst of energy erupts before him, the quick-thinking young man steels himself and thinks that this is his moment to act. Sputtering in disgust, the young man emerged from the murky green water and noisily spat out the foul liquid, startled by the unpleasant taste. Furious and dripping with water, the man shouted after the panicked boy fleeing down the alley, demanding to know where he thought he was running and insisting that this was not running away as he chased him with urgent determination. With unwavering determination, the young man looked back over his shoulder and asserted that he would remember his opponent's face, making it clear his withdrawal was a calculated tactical retreat. Beneath the radiant blue sky, someone reflected triumphantly that the blows they had received would be worn upon their chest like a medal. A man who refuses to accept defeat stands resolute as sunlight streams between the tall wooden structures toward the bright blue sky. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the boy sat anxiously in the sunlit alleyway, deeply concerned about what lay ahead. Examining his injured wrist in disbelief, the young man lamented with frustration that he was not just an office worker, yet his body was so weak he had even sprained himself while punching. Sitting cross-legged and weighed down by anxiety, the young man resolved that before he could even consider the tower, he needed to focus on repairing his weakened body. With a cautious tone, the alert boy with striking blue eyes looked up and carefully asked if the other person was hungry, his curiosity mingled with wariness. As the white-haired boy silently revealed his glowing red eye and pressed a finger to his lips, an eerie tension filled the space, leaving the other boy startled and uneasy. Inside the rustic room, the curious boy questioned the seated young man about whether he recognized him, to which the calm young man responded neutrally that he did not. The young man, maintaining a calm and unfazed demeanor, silently acknowledged to himself that he had already anticipated the truth. Assessing the boy's disheveled appearance but noting the quality of his clothing, onlookers speculated with curiosity that he must be a noble's child who had suffered a fall from grace due to some political conflict. In other words, the ominous narration defines someone as a walking, beautiful yet perilous presence, like a living bomb. In the narrow, stone-paved alleyway, introduced himself in a matter-of-fact tone and added that his mother was, while the other boy listened warily. With irritation clear on his face, the boy confronted the other person, expressing his suspicion that he was learning things he shouldn't and bluntly questioning whether the other's state of mind was sound. A boy with red eyes calmly admitted that he did not have a mother, prompting the other person to quickly apologize for the awkward mistake. With a dismissive tone, the boy calmly announced that, since he had no father, he considered himself the winner and insisted it was time for everyone to part ways, urging the group to leave behind anyone who might cause trouble before the situation escalated. Meanwhile, the thoughtful boy stood assessing the challenge before him, his curious gaze fixed on the calm, resolute figure of the seated boy, who maintained his meditative pose with unwavering determination. A tense exchange unfolded as the silver-haired boy questioned whether the annoyed, dark-haired male was leaving, prompting the latter to defiantly declare that he would be going with him. Standing his ground against the man's intimidation, the young man defiantly told him to back off, while the man, undeterred, mockingly asked if it hurt. With a confident smile, the boy raised his glowing hand and, radiating hope, assured everyone that he would heal the wound as he cast a brilliant healing spell. As the astonished boy looked on, the confident boy revealed his magical powers, prompting the stunned onlooker to exclaim in disbelief that this was the legendary magic touch. The young man, his eyes wide with shock and sweat beading on his brow, realized in alarm that what he was experiencing went far beyond ordinary magic, sending him into a state of internal panic. A magical crest radiates beneath a mystical sky as the secret healing technique of the fallen family is revealed, casting a reverent and mysterious aura over the scene. A sudden realization struck as the air thickened with the unmistakable sense that something dirty and dangerous was unfolding between the two, their confrontation charged with sinister intent. As the focused young man activated a glowing magical circle with wary curiosity, he wondered to himself why a child from the family would be in the gray zone at a time when should still be strong, musing over the name. Noticing something unusual, the young man turned his attention toward the sound with a hint of curiosity, quietly wondering what might have caused it. A boy with heterochromatic, glowing eyes appeared, his presence radiating mysterious energy as he confidently asked if someone had called for him. Suddenly realizing the imminent danger, the young man reacted with alarm, admitting to himself that he was in serious trouble. A close-up reveals the intense gaze of a boy, whose mismatched green and red pupils mark him as a member of the bloodline. The monster known as the Mad Butcher who cannot be killed, looms ominously over a pile of bodies, his sinister presence by the flames and dark energy swirling around him. Amid a burst of dark, chaotic energy, the boy with mismatched glowing eyes laughed maniacally, his deranged expression revealing the terrifying extent of his sinister power as his true identity was unveiled. A boy in a suit sat on the ground, laughing with delight as he exclaimed in amazement about the ants he had discovered. As the tension in the room rose, the man began to mockingly count aloud, prompting the frustrated young man to react with disbelief and annoyance at being so openly taunted. Back when he was a troubleshooter before regression, he had been dispatched to the Blander family on the orders of the family. As the two hooded men rushed through the vibrant forest, one complained with irritation that the Blander family should handle their own affairs instead of summoning them, while the other responded with indifferent resignation that the motives of the higher-ups were beyond their understanding. As they hurried through the sun-dappled forest, one of the hooded young men shared in a concerned tone that he had heard about a deadly monster at the Soft estate, claiming that dozens had already lost their lives, while his companion listened anxiously to this grim rumor. As the determined young man surged through the vibrant forest, he wondered aloud if the threat ahead might be a monster, perhaps something as fearsome as an ogre, his focus unwavering despite the uncertainty. In that moment, the hooded young man stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock as he witnessed flames raging in the background. Not an ogre, but something far more ominous seemed to loom as the three cloaked figures braced themselves for the confrontation, their silhouettes outlined by the furious blaze behind them. Amidst the roaring flames, the relentless man stood shirtless and bloodied, triumphantly hoisting two unconscious foes by their legs in a display of overwhelming dominance before the ornate building. Casting Soft's healing magic without pause, the young man grinned maniacally amid the chaos, his laughter echoing with a sense of pure madness as blazing magical energy swirled around him. Amid crackling flames and lightning, the infamous monster of Blander, known as the Mad Butcher who would not die even if killed, makes a terrifying entrance, emerging unscathed and sinister above his defeated foes. Delighted by what he saw, the boy exclaimed in amazement and laughed joyfully as colorful sparkles surrounded him. As the ominous man muttered an ambiguous sequence, his tone growing more sinister, the wary young man listened uneasily, reacting with doubt as he questioned whether any of it could truly be real. Amidst the shabby surroundings, one of the boys wondered uneasily why the only son of the esteemed Blander family would be found in such a place, casting furtive glances at his withdrawn companion. A desperate boy approached and demanded food from the startled main character, who reacted with confusion at the sudden request. A cheerful boy with striking red eyes smiled brightly as he encouraged the other person to eat, explaining with supportive enthusiasm that his mother always said eating well was essential for good health, and that not eating was the reason for feeling unwell. In the dimly lit room, the young man hesitantly asked if anyone had money, his unease clear as he tried to mask the tension in his voice. With a smug confidence, the main character presented a bag brimming with radiant gold coins, nonchalantly implying that this impressive treasure was merely the beginning, while the man beside him stood speechless at the dazzling display. As the young boy gazed up with curiosity, the older man gently called out too, his calm demeanor offering quiet reassurance. With a confident grin and a sparkling thumbs up, the boy boldly proclaimed to his companion that they were now friends, leaving his sudden declaration hanging playfully in the air. As they walked down the cobblestone street, the older boy slung his arm around the younger one and insisted that since they were friends, they should share everything, leaving the younger boy visibly uncomfortable as he clutched his bowl of food. With sparkling excitement in the air, the energetic boy encouraged his friend to join him for a meal, while his companion beamed with joy at being warmly called a friend. As the sun set in a wash of color, the man asked curiously what his companion possessed, to which the earnest, his gratitude clear, quietly confided that above all else, he had a friend. Amidst the dimly lit old houses at dusk, an unseen observer remarked in a reflective tone that it was a cool line. Under the serene glow of the moon, the boy let out a carefree burp, unbothered by the stillness of the quiet village around him. After enjoying a satisfying meal and washing up, the young man relaxed on his bed, patting his full stomach and feeling completely refreshed. On the dimly lit rooftop, the cautious observer confronted the startled boy, demanding to know what he was doing, while the boy, still surprised, admitted he hadn't known there was a house above the place where they ate. Reflecting pensively indoors, the white-haired boy admitted to himself that he had always slept outside, only just now realizing it for the first time. The blue-haired boy, appearing thoughtful for a moment, then affirmed his understanding with determination as he slapped his hands down on the bed, clearly resolved to follow through with his decision. A silver-haired boy, his voice steady but vulnerable, admitted to the others with a serious expression that he did not have a father either. On opposite beds in the dimly lit room, the calm confidently asserted that the other boy was responsible, but the animated boy immediately insisted that he was not, their playful argument filling the space with lively energy. The blue-haired boy, uneasy and caught off guard, questioned the other person about whether they had a mother, his concern underscoring the awkward tension between them. Distressed and holding his head, exclaimed in frustration that she was nowhere to be found, while the two anxious boys urgently searched the room for the missing person. Contemplating the empty space, the speaker mused that if she was not present, perhaps she did not exist at all, before acknowledging how unsettling that thought was and resolving to evaluate the situation further. In the somberly lit room, the main character, his voice tinged with concern, asked the other boy how long he had been alone, prompting the boy to reflectively reply that since running away from his family, he had counted 10 nights by himself. The young man, his expression tense with worry, questioned the other about whether they had run away, if someone was chasing them, and sought clarification about whether 10 sleeps truly meant 10 days. A mysterious boy with heterochromatic eyes calmly shared that he, too, tended to nap a lot, his thoughtful gesture hinting at a hidden depth. With a playful grin, the boy cheerfully boasted that he had taken naps twice a day, 10 times in total, making light of his frequent dozing. As the two boys relaxed on their separate beds in the dimly lit room, the first reflected that it had been around 3 or 4 days since their arrival, while the other complained with frustration that he hadn't managed to nap because the ground was too uncomfortable. Alone in the dimly lit room, the boy sits quietly on his bed, his gaze turned upward as he reflects in somber, pensive silence. The blue-haired man, radiating a wild and unhinged energy as he seized his own collar, seemed to embody the notion that a true madman is unmistakably different from the very beginning. While the blue-haired boy rested wearily against another, he calculated that acting as the child's caretaker during this uncertain period could help him forge a valuable connection with the family. Lying awake in the moonlit darkness, the boy reasoned to himself that reading books from prestigious families would prove useful when eventually confronting. Rising from the water with fierce determination in his eyes, the young man resolved to confront the 57 grudges that weighed heavily on his chest before anything else. The blue-haired boy sat up in bed with a serious expression and firmly warned not to disturb him as he prepared to lie down, cautioning that any interruption would lead to serious consequences. A supportive boy, standing by the bed, asked if the other was practicing his breathing, to which the serious boy explained that he was and assured the first that once finished, he would help him practice as well, promising to wait patiently. In his past life, the protagonist had built his magical foundation using the standard spells provided to troubleshooters. With unwavering determination, the young man explained that he had infiltrated various noble houses to steal spells, leaping through a shattered window under the cover of night, with the stolen spell papers clutched tightly in his grasp. Having narrowly escaped death on numerous occasions, the hard-earned spells were revealed as fragments of glass and sheets of spell paper floated through a cosmic, star-filled void. Amidst a mysterious, star-filled expanse where fragments of paper and glass floated weightlessly, the main character began to informatively enumerate various magical disciplines, spirit magic, summoning, and alchemy, remarking that these were merely a collection of random arts. However, a sudden, ominous interruption hangs over the scene, signaling that an unexpected twist is about to unfold. Just before death claimed them, a power of truly catastrophic magnitude manifested, embodied by a menacing figure cloaked in fur and gripping a staff that radiated ominous energy. Amidst a sky crackling with lightning, the determined protagonist stood alone and declared the reason behind his unwavering resolve. With unwavering resolve, the young man silently vowed to himself that this time he would not fail. The spell to learn is foundational art, the heavenly origin technique, which serves as the root of all spells and can accommodate every attribute of mana. Lying peacefully in bed with a confident, knowing smile, the boy reflected with satisfaction that he had once memorized this information for research, and was now preparing to put it to use. As swirling red energy envelops him and a fiery symbol ignites on his chest, the young man activates the powerful breathing technique, his amazement clear amid the intensity. Overwhelmed by a sudden, agonizing surge of power, the young man cried out inwardly that it felt as if molten lava was coursing through his veins, desperately wondering what was happening to him as burning magical markings swirled across his body. Suddenly, the young man recoiled in alarm as he noticed mysterious impurities swirling within the blue energy radiating from his hand, frantically questioning why they had appeared. A high-level spell, typically reserved for the elite mages of noble families, is being invoked as the experienced caster channels mystical energy toward the tense, seated boy within the glowing ritual circle. A mystical blue aura swirled around the young man as he resolutely activated a forbidden power, one reserved solely for those of direct bloodline. A silhouetted figure stands transcendent at the heart of a dazzling pillar of magical light, his entire being enveloped by the awe-inspiring phenomenon known as the mana shower. Bolting upright in bed, the young man, still gripped by panic, cried out in terror as he awoke from his nightmare. Sitting on the edge of the bed in the dimly lit room, the disoriented young man wondered anxiously how much time had passed since he lost consciousness. As the night sky stretches quietly overhead, the young boy sleeps soundly in his bed, his gentle breathing an image of pure contentment. Astonished and reflective, the young man realized that not only were all impurities gone from his mana circuit, but the energy within him now shone with a purity surpassing even what he had known in his past life. Steeling his resolve, the young man reminded himself that despite everything, he must press forward. Faced with the overwhelming menace exuded by the towering man, the protagonist silently acknowledged in despair that, no matter how many times he was reborn, overcoming such power would remain impossible. Clenching his fist in resolve, the protagonist silently reaffirmed his unwavering determination, certain of at least one undeniable truth. Realizing that his chances had just increased, the ambitious young man confidently acknowledged his past experience as a troubleshooter. A man who never gives up, even on near-zero odds, stands as the embodiment of unwavering determination, his perseverance highlighted against a stark white backdrop. Filled with excitement, the boy exclaimed his amazement as he admired the bright blue sky and peaceful rooftops stretching before him. Amazed and cheerful, the boy excitedly announced to everyone that his hair had turned brown, his heterochromatic eyes sparkling as colorful light flared around him. While carefully adjusting his shirt to ensure the disguise was perfect, the wary boy assessed that with his platinum hair concealed and new clothes, he was confident the family would no longer recognize him. With a confident smile as he lifted his hat, the heterochromatic boy eagerly asked his friend what their next move would be, signaling his readiness for whatever lay ahead. The boy's serious expression slowly softened as warmth blossomed into a gentle smile, hinting at newfound hope. Beneath the bright, open sky streaked with sunlight and a faint rainbow, someone ominously announced their intention to unleash chaos. Energized by the bright sunlight, the young man stretched upward and shouted exuberantly, his voice echoing his invigorated spirit. Stepping outside with a calm and refreshed demeanor, the man contentedly reflected on how restful his nap had been and noted to himself that the weather was especially pleasant. The young man, startled and confused, reacted to the unexpected event by asking in disbelief what was happening. As the determined young man confidently entered the sunlit alleyway with the anxious boy following close behind, someone nearby reacted with surprise upon realizing that the youngest had arrived. Confronting the two boys in the narrow alley, the irritated man demanded to know where they had been running off to and accused them of looking as if they had just showered in a sewer, his annoyance clear as the boys stood uneasily before him. As the aggressive man delivered a powerful punch to the chest of the unsuspecting youth, he wondered aloud with a hostile sneer who this newcomer was, speculating that the boy looked rather wealthy. Standing confidently over the stunned boy he had just knocked to the ground, the man asserted that he must have found the right place. Bathed in harsh red light, the determined boy announced in a cold, vengeful tone that, since the other remained in his memory, the punishment would begin with 123 hits. Suddenly, two boys, startled and alarmed by an abrupt disruption in the stone-walled room, called out in confusion and worry, demanding to know from Spotty what was happening. Suddenly, one of the young men shouted in angry alarm that someone had broken in, while another, sounding surprised, quickly recognized the youngest boy standing alone and cornered before their group. All the faces surrounding the boy were ones he recognized, and with a confident, knowing smile, he seemed to take silent measure of each one. Meanwhile, two intense boys fixed their menacing gazes upward, one flashing a sinister grin, while the other, with striking, stared icily, creating an ominous atmosphere that seemed to silently challenge anyone who dared approach. In a sudden burst of violence, the determined protagonist delivered a powerful punch to the unsuspecting man's face, leaving him reeling in shock. Suddenly, a young man is caught off guard as he receives a violent blow to the abdomen, his shock and pain made unmistakable by the spray of blood and the forceful motion of the attack. In a surge of fierce aggression, the dark-haired male delivered a harsh blow from above, leaving the blonde-haired boy overwhelmed and vulnerable amidst the chaos. As the focused fighter swiftly overpowered his stunned opponents, the astonished boy watched in awe, exclaiming his disbelief at the overwhelming display of strength. Focusing intensely, the male character channeled blue mana into his clenched fist, and determined to execute the technique, reminded himself to strike swiftly and repeatedly. The boy, his face lighting up with amazement, exclaimed with pure joy that what he was witnessing was truly incredible, his excitement mirrored by the playful cartoon bunnies surrounding him. With unwavering resolve, the young man landed a powerful punch on his opponent's face, declaring that this was the moment people called truly awesome, while the younger boy cheered on in triumph. A wide-eyed boy with heterochromatic eyes marveled in amazement, exclaiming with excitement that what he witnessed was truly incredible. Suddenly, as one boy lay injured and motionless on the ground, The other stared down in bewilderment, exclaiming in shock as he tried to process what had just happened. With gentle reassurance, the compassionate boy promised the injured child that the magic would not hurt, and that he would heal him, casting a hopeful glow over their encounter. As the battered boy was pulled up by the collar to safety, he stammered his gratitude, his voice trembling with relief. As the menacing boy tightened his grip on his victim's hair, the terrified and battered boy silently wondered how many times he had been struck, overwhelmed by the relentless bullying. As several boys collapsed in exhaustion around him, the main character, breathing heavily yet unwavering, expressed his determination to endure despite the overwhelming strain. In a sudden burst of violence, the shirtless boy delivered a fierce blow to the shocked man's head, causing him to collapse to the ground as the man cried out in pain and surprise. The boy, visibly embarrassed and clutching his sore backside, stammered that he had forgotten how many times he was struck, as the stern figure interrogated him about his punishment. Stepping forward with bright enthusiasm, the cheerful boy eagerly asked if it was finally his turn, while the anxious figure before him sweated nervously under the fading sunset. In the oppressive darkness, the frightened boy, his eyes wide with panic, pleaded desperately for the unsettling chant and the ongoing act to stop. As the dominant man loomed menacingly over the frightened boy, he instructed him to listen carefully and reminded him that he belonged to the so-called box-shoulder generation, prompting the distressed boy to anxiously recite the healing spell under intense supervision. In a moment of desperation, an unseen voice pleaded for mercy, exclaiming frantically that they could only count up to 2 digits as the empty page echoed with their anguish. As night settled over the courtyard, the authoritative leader calmly expressed his gratitude for the day, while a nervous boy anxiously echoed his thanks even louder, prompting the rest of the group to stand in respectful silence. After confidently assessing his work and expressing pride in the well-placed energy, the young man announced that everything was finished, while the joyful boy eagerly suggested they play again. Reflecting on his arduous accomplishment, the seasoned troubleshooter felt a surge of pride in himself for having expertly completed more than 100 hits per person, surpassing 1,000 in total, which marked a new challenge even for someone with his extensive experience, save for mountain and aerial battles. Caught off guard and visibly nervous, the blue-eyed boy hesitated before nervously attempting to speak, betraying his apprehension. A nervous, battered man anxiously pleaded for permission to leave, and the calm, composed figure responded by granting it, bringing a sense of tense relief to the moment. Outside his own house, the anxious man nervously questioned why the stoic, shirtless figure confronted him there, insisting that this was his home. The red-haired man glared fiercely and challenged the group, prompting one of the frightened men to hurriedly insist that they would back off rather than cause any more trouble. Under the pale moonlight, as the solitary boy stood with unwavering resolve watching the indifferent group walk away from him, he acknowledged inwardly that what he felt was not resentment. With a tense glint in his blue eyes, the young man admitted seriously to himself that he was finding things truly difficult. Suddenly, the tense silence shattered as both and the man sensed someone approaching, anxiety gripping them just as a menacing, red-glowing figure crashed down onto the dark street. The young man, his eyes sharp with suspicion, assessed the elusive presence before him, noting to himself that while it moved quickly and secretively, its unique aura reminded him of a seasoned troubleshooter. Spotting someone he suspected could be a pursuer, the main character grew worried, while a cheerful boy nearby waved in greeting, seemingly oblivious to the tension. The young man anxiously reflected that although he had tried to be cautious, he could not understand how he had been discovered, expressing disbelief that was the first to find him as he sensed an unusual abundance of mana crackling around his hand. As the young man's face is cast in blue shadow, he reflects with troubled determination that although both magic and close combat seem daunting, he questions his own limits, wondering who he truly is. Even as he stood beneath the moonlight with determination in his eyes and magical energy crackling around him, he reflected that facing such challenges without abundant magical power was nothing new to him, and he felt resolute as he prepared to confront adversity once more. With unwavering determination, the young man commanded himself to gather all the mana and compress it repeatedly, believing that the immense energy he had accumulated was finally sufficient. Under the dramatic blue light, his features tightened with unwavering determination as he prepared to unleash his power. Seizing what he believed to be his only opportunity, the determined young man hurled himself downward in a desperate, high-speed plunge, surrounded by crackling blue energy. Suddenly, the boy collapses to his knees, his face slick with sweat as terror overwhelms him. Amidst the shadowy village, the alarmed man exclaimed in astonishment at the young master's unexpected actions, his voice ringing sharply through the night. As the man in the suit is violently slammed to the ground, he cries out in agony, overwhelmed by the sudden shock and pain. Reacting to a shocking revelation, the frightened boy cried out in alarm as he recognized Alfredo, his panic evident in his wide-eyed, trembling expression. Overcome with emotion, the loyal butler desperately clutched the young master's shoulders, exclaiming in a fretful voice that he had searched for him tirelessly, wondering where he had been and what he had been doing, and confessing that his deep worry had left him sleepless, while a startled boy and a surprised bystander looked on. As the desperate man clung to the other, begging not to be forced into something he refused, and insisting he would not let go until the other returned to the family, pleading to be killed instead. A shocked boy yelled for him to get off, while the silent observer watched the tense confrontation unfold. The atmosphere grew tense as the young master, overwhelmed by anxiety, found himself alone after fleeing from his family in what would later be remembered as a desperate runaway situation. The man, observing the boy's rebellious stance, remarked in a watchful tone that he was causing a scene in front of their guests. During this awkward encounter, the composed butler calmly introduced himself as Alfredo while holding the boy upside down, prompting the resigned boy to respond that his name was. With a warm and persuasive tone, the well-dressed man extended his hand and explained that, since young master seemed to truly like him, he wondered if the MC would consider joining their family. Stunned by the revelation, the blue-haired boy processed the shocking news and urgently asked if it was truly about the family. Reflecting under the ominous red light, the stern man contemplated the prestigious family's contradictory rule to shun both impurity and nobility, admitting to himself that he still could not discern their true intentions. With a determined glint in his eye, the young man firmly announced his intention to form a connection with the family, revealing his resolve to pursue this alliance regardless of any obstacles. Conveniently, the family's territory lies along a route leading to the city, where the renowned academy stands with its acclaimed library, both considered the finest in the East. With determination, the protagonist resolved to create the finest library, and considered that visiting one during his preparations might prove worthwhile. On the dimly lit street, the older man politely thanked the others for their help and stated that he would fetch the carriage, while the submissive young man bowed respectfully and the quiet boy stood by in silence. Seated in the dim room, the protagonist reflected pensively on how his journey had diverged from his original plan to build the library, yet consoled himself with the thought that sometimes unexpected turns could still lead to good outcomes. Confidently preparing for a bold infiltration, the young man declared to himself that it was time to see whether the family's food truly lived up to its reputation. Above, the serene glow of a full moon bathes the drifting clouds and tranquil night sky, establishing a calm and peaceful atmosphere. As the carriage rolled to a stop before the grand estate's ornate gate under the glow of nighttime lamps, the professional coachman formally announced to his passengers that they had arrived at the family residence. At that moment, the resolute young man stepped down firmly from the chair onto the stone path, his determined entrance heightening the tense atmosphere of the night. Pensively gazing up at the starry night sky, the young man wondered to himself if this marked his first official visit to this place. At night, the protagonist approached the imposing family's mansion with determined steps, while solemn attendants and young boys stood in formal formation, their serious expressions matching the anticipation in the air. Outside the grand mansion under the night sky, the authoritative man instructed to ensure everyone rested comfortably and expressed his trust in her, while calmly acknowledged her responsibility. Maintaining a calm and authoritative demeanor, instructed the apprehensive to follow her, prompting him to stammer her name with clear nervousness as he reacted to her serious tone. Suddenly, anguished cries pierce the tense night as someone desperately admits their mistake and calls out for, their voice echoing across the shadowy mansion gates. As moonlight spills across the grand, empty hallway, a mysterious man strides forward with unwavering determination, his presence casting an ominous air over the silent night. In the dimly lit, tense atmosphere, a mysterious man in a suit rapped sharply on the door, his focused expression hinting at the gravity of his arrival. A composed, mustachioed man opened the door and calmly invited the visitor to come inside. In the lavish, book-filled study, the loyal subordinate respectfully informed the commanding figure that had been located in the 7th black and white zone, and that he was now returning after escorting him. Beneath the glittering chandelier, the resolute man advanced toward the grand desk, where the calm, authoritative woman awaited his approach, the tension between them heightened by the presence of a mysterious letter and a chessboard. Suddenly, the resolute man is struck by a powerful explosion of light, his figure consumed by the overwhelming force. Suddenly, as a hand reached out to activate the glowing red magical circle, an unknown figure reacted with shock, exclaiming in disbelief that it was the 7th black and white zone. Desperately casting a powerful protective spell, the frantic woman demanded to know if was unharmed, warning that any harm to her son would not be tolerated. Amid the swirling debris, the level-headed man calmly urged the matron to compose herself and listen to what he had to say. In the dimly lit, ornate room, the calm and observant figure contemplated a new revelation, thoughtfully remarking that they understood what had been revealed. With a gentle sense of relief, the composed woman closed her eyes and calmly cast a glowing magical glyph before her chest, expressing that she was grateful for the reassuring outcome. In the tense, swirling energy, the authoritative man delivered a pointed remark, stating with grave seriousness that it was fortunate for both the matron and whoever might have harmed the young master, a veiled warning hanging in the ominous air. The fury of Mother, once known as the Blood Witch, erupts as she stands amid swirling dark and red energy, her ominous presence leaving all to wonder who could possibly stop her. A composed, protective woman, visibly relieved, admitted that she was losing control whenever it concerned her son, expressed gratitude that the situation hadn't escalated further, and warmly acknowledged the other's efforts. A man with a mustache looked down solemnly in the warmly lit room, responding earnestly with sincere reassurance that what he had done was simply his duty, though he hesitated as if something more needed to be said. In the quiet library, the sharp-eyed woman thoughtfully pointed out that there was something unusual, prompting another to question what she meant. Standing before the woman in the lavish office, the silver-haired man inquired with curiosity about the new friend named, pressing for details while she listened with composed authority. He realized he had been discovered, impressed by how the mustached man in the dimly lit room had already prepared for a counterattack before any movement was made. As the boy confronted the man, a glowing magical seal formed in his focused hands, hinting at a mysterious power about to be unleashed. A shimmering blue aura gathered as the determined magic user focused his energy, casting a powerful spell that formed a mana bullet. A red-eyed woman in elegant attire reflects with intrigue on the remarkable abilities of a child from the black and white zone, contemplating the significance of such astonishing talent. In the dimly lit room lined with, the stern-looking man with the mustache explained to the matron, his tone resolute as he delivered the reasoning behind his decisive statement. With a commanding presence and a serious expression, the mysterious man looked down and respectfully asked if he might request a favor. Amid the serene sunlight filtering through the trees onto the grand, ornate building, someone called out to summon the boy, instantly putting him on alert. With a sense of urgent desperation, the man stood beneath the spotlight and pleaded passionately for someone to accept the role of successor. In the sunlit room, the stunned young man stood frozen as the overbearing adult loomed over him, the tension crackling in the charged confrontation. A mustached older man, beaming with pride and confidence, boasted with satisfaction that it was only natural for the boy to accept such a rare chance, emphasizing that even a stray from the black and white zone could gain both high income and honor as the butler of a prestigious family. A mustached man, authoritative yet caught off guard, was left stunned as he was firmly rejected and could only stammer in disbelief at the unexpected refusal. The older man, visibly shocked, questioned in disbelief whether he had truly heard the boy correctly, leaving the uncertain boy as the center of attention in the tense moment. Startled and confused, the boy with heterochromatic eyes questioned his friend about the meaning behind his outburst, his voice betraying both surprise and frustration. With a calm sincerity, the young man expressed heartfelt gratitude for being considered the successor, but gently explained that he preferred things to remain as they were, truly appreciating the offer as he reassured the emotional boy. In a warmly lit room, the mustached man suddenly reacted with surprise as he exclaimed in realization that he finally understood what had just occurred. A shocked young man, taking control of the tense moment, confronted the defiant boy with red eyes by insisting that it was actually the boy who had cursed, not himself. Reflecting on the arrogance of another, the narrator admits to understanding it, recalling how they too once acted recklessly due to humble beginnings and a lack of self-restraint. In a sunlit, grand room, the older man solemnly imparted to the younger man that the world was truly vast and far from small, sharing this wisdom as the younger listened thoughtfully. A tense exchange unfolds as the experienced man, speaking seriously, suggests that the younger man must feel invincible, only for the younger man to calmly refute this assumption and maintain his composure. With his eyes squeezed shut and brow deeply furrowed, he silently commanded himself to persevere through the overwhelming pain, embodying unwavering resolve despite the struggle. As a menacing goblin lunged at him with its club in the rocky canyon, the calm, mustached man coolly explained that the saying about a goblin in the canyon perfectly described their current predicament. Raised only in the canyon and unaware of the dangers beyond, the young man thoughtfully compared himself to the majestic wyvern looming behind him. Suddenly, a jagged red energy fissure bursts through the darkness, unleashing a wave of ominous, destructive force. With a stern resolve, the butler proclaimed that since the boy was utterly clueless, he himself would step in and demonstrate, slamming his foot into the ground as radiant energy surged around him. A stern, mustached man, his expression a mix of awe and terror, declared with a shaken voice just how vast and terrifying he found the world to be. Bathed in the gentle morning light, a grand building with soaring spires stands in tranquil splendor, quietly introducing the serene setting. Suddenly, a commanding man bursts into the sunlit room, his presence filling the space with authority as the young boy follows close behind, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Inside the vast, shadowy cathedral, three young men instinctively turned with tense expressions, their bodies stiffening as they reacted in alarm to an unseen threat looming beyond their line of sight. As the two figures approached, a group of young men standing in formation bowed deeply and respectfully greeted the butler master, their voices united in a formal display of reverence that left the new leader surprised, and the senior guide quietly proud. With a confident air, the authoritative man turned to the boy and challenged him by pointing out that the surrounding youths were all recognized talents of house, insisting that the boy must surely sense the difference. Standing in the grand hall with a pensive expression, the boy quietly acknowledged to himself that House's reputation was formidable. It was hard to believe the group was still in their teens, so well-trained and composed as they were, with an aura, though subtle, that filled the entire space. A group of smug boys in uniform clustered together, with one of them sneeringly remarking that the others should look at their opponent's eyes, dismissing them all as mere goblins. In a tense exchange, the older man anxiously pressed the younger man for a response to his proposal, while the younger man cautiously admitted that he did feel something but hesitated to give a clear answer. With an inspiring tone, the mentor assured the children that if they followed in his footsteps, they would not only shine like their peers but surpass everyone else, filling the room with hope. In the grand hall, the young man turned away with resentment, declaring that he despised the light, while the older man slumped forward in shock and demanded to know why. With a calm demeanor, the master acknowledged the butler, who bowed respectfully in response to the formal greeting. In the grand hall, the smug, authoritative man publicly challenged the trainee, condescendingly asking if he had something to say. With a smug and dismissive air, the man confidently cast doubt on the boy's true feelings, suggesting that if the boy had genuinely cared, he would not have rejected the offer. Observing that he had not truly internalized the lesson, someone in the room requested permission to help guide him through first-hand experience. In the grand hall, one man cautiously questioned whether a duel was being proposed, while the other, exuding confidence with a playful smile, clarified that he merely wanted to offer a small demonstration of magic. A mustached man, his face half obscured by shadows, reconsidered someone's bold proposal and admitted to himself that although it seemed cocky, it was not a bad idea. In the grand hall, the commanding man turned to the calm, analytical boy and proposed in a firm tone that he consider accepting a simple duel with the young man present. With a steady gaze, the young man acknowledged with determination that he fully understood just how much of a threat he posed to his adversaries. Three sinister young men in red vests, their eyes glowing with an ominous light and shadows obscuring their faces, embody the menacing image the protagonist believes others now associate with him. Inside the grand hall, the young man confidently requested permission to choose his opponent, to which the older man, appraising his resolve, allowed him to try. With a sharp, assertive gesture, the direct young man singled out his confident target, making it clear to everyone present whom he had chosen. With commanding gestures, the two authoritative men began selecting boys from the lineup, sternly indicating each one, including the reluctant protagonist, while their nervous and anxious expressions betrayed the apprehension filling the courtyard. With unwavering confidence, the young man boldly declared that he would take on all 5 opponents at once, leaving the group of boys in stunned disbelief and uncertainty. With a menacing glint in his eyes, the young man snapped his fingers and coldly threatened that anyone who was scared should simply go die, exuding an intense and ruthless aura. With a sharp, dismissive grunt, the stern older man glared intensely at the protagonist, his irritation palpable as he tried to assert his dominance and make the other feel the weight of his authority. A well-dressed man with a large mustache laughed confidently, expressing his pride as he exclaimed that this was the spirit a successor should possess. In the ornate hall, as the stern older man challenged whether the boy could take responsibility for his bold words and warned that such statements could be seen as an insult to House, the young man smirked confidently and asserted that he would indeed take responsibility. With a stern expression, the authoritative man raised his fingers and, setting the terms of a tense challenge, asserted that if his opponent could endure for just 1 minute, a reward awaited, but failure would bring consequences for which they would be held responsible. Realizing the hidden expectations behind the word responsible, the young man grew increasingly annoyed as he understood the old man was trying to draw him into succeeding as the butler. As the young man stood determined and alone in the vast, sunlit arena, a worried onlooker quietly voiced his concerns to the butler master about the potential danger unfolding before them. Inside the grand hall, the authoritative man resolutely explained to the startled boy that the boy's stubbornness was valuable, but asserted that it would eventually need to be broken for true growth. A worried instructor, his thoughts racing as anxiety took hold, panicked internally that the guest's worsening condition might spell the end of his own career. In front of the towering building, observed the scene with intrigue. The man appeared visibly shocked, and the boy examined the situation in contemplative silence, all three reacting with puzzled expressions to the unexpected turn of events. A nervous man, his voice trembling with worry, urgently warned the calm, odd-eyed boy that his friend was in real danger and pleaded with him to stop the butler master before it was too late. The cheerful boy, his eyes sparkling with excitement, exclaimed in amazement that he was truly shocked as well. The young man, shocked by an unexpected sight, reacted by shielding his eyes and exclaiming in disbelief at what he had just witnessed. In the grand hall, the stern maid warned the irritated young master that Lady would scold him if he got involved, prompting the boy to sulk in frustration. Impatiently, the authority figure demanded that the instructor begin the match, prompting the resigned participant to acknowledge the order and agree to start, while an anxious onlooker watched the tense exchange unfold. Despite tears streaming down his face, the young man forced a shaky smile, his attempt at composure only deepening the worry of the woman silently watching from the background. Standing in utter silence, The serious woman with glasses surveys her surroundings with a thoughtful, pensive gaze. With a resolute expression, the boy walked away from the tense courtyard, warning the two wary onlookers not to get involved and assuring them he would return soon. With a sinister glint in his mismatched eyes, the boy gave an unsettling smile as he confirmed in a chilling tone that he understood. Standing in the circular duel arena, the authoritative man seriously informed everyone that he would explain the rules and that the duel would proceed in turns, while the main character and the group of boys listened with varying expressions of focus, interest, and skepticism. With a solemn expression, the young man warned the others to remember that the instructor could halt the duel at any moment, setting a tense and anticipatory mood. Inside the grand hall, the main character stood alone, his determined gaze fixed on the group of stern boys watching him from outside, ready to face down his rivals as tension filled the air. In a surge of irritation, the man muttered contemptuously under his breath, expressing his anger toward the vagrant brat. A rush of hostile intent permeates the scene as someone internally vows to crush their target and reveal their true worth, dismissing any notions of pity from the young master or the butler. With fierce determination, the young man thrust his arm forward and announced that the challenge was to begin. Suddenly, the man let out a gasp as he was struck in the chest by a powerful blue energy attack, his shock evident as the force sent him hurtling backward. Suddenly, the man cried out in shock, his face contorted with terror as he reacted in horror to whatever he had just witnessed. Breathing heavily, the young man gasped in panic as he spun around, his fear evident in every frantic movement. At that moment, the aftermath of the attack became clear as several boys collapsed to the ground in agony and shock, smoke still lingering around their writhing forms. As the dominant figure closed the distance with a forceful stride, the startled young man instinctively recoiled, clutching his chest in fear. With a determined glint in his eyes, the confident young man the glowing blue energy in his hand, stating that he would personally demonstrate the experience and warning not to underestimate the little guy. As the astonished man watched in disbelief, he stammered in shock at the sight of the focused mage conjuring glowing blue magic bullets in his hand. A dismissive voice downplayed the technique, explaining that it was merely basic mana control and due to its high mana cost would be ineffective in combat. With his face illuminated by a surge of blue energy, focused intently as he prepared to unleash his formidable power. As dark, crackling energy surged around him and overwhelmed his foes, the young man declared with resolute intensity that others should not judge people so easily. Suddenly, chaos erupted as several boys, caught off guard and overwhelmed, cried out in agony while being violently blasted backward by an intense surge of blue energy. With unwavering determination, the protagonist announced that the third and crucial step was about to begin. The world seemed impossibly vast and bitter as the intense young man seized his startled opponent by the collar, his menacing glare making it clear that this confrontation would not end peacefully. In a sudden eruption of fierce power, the boy unleashed a devastating energy blast at the shadowy man, who cried out in shock and pain as the intense blue light engulfed him. In the eerie cathedral, the young man, his expression manic and triumphant, announced that he would now inject all of his accumulated experiences into his target and demanded that they learn from them. A terrified man, clutching his bruised face, yelled in shock that his assailant must be a lunatic and insisted that what had just happened was not magic. Suddenly, a surge of arcane power erupts as a mighty force descends, unleashing pure magic in a spectacular burst of energy. With unwavering determination, the male character unleashed a powerful surge of physical magic, overwhelming his opponent in a brilliant display of force. Suddenly, the young man recoiled in shock, his face etched with terror as he struggled to process the alarming turn of events. Suddenly, the three boys froze in place, their faces etched with shock and alarm as they reacted instinctively to an unseen threat looming just beyond their line of sight. In front of the imposing building, a ruthless boy delivered vicious kicks to a helpless victim sprawled on the ground, while a shocked bystander recoiled, and a stern man observed the brutal scene from behind. A mustached man, his eyes wide with astonishment, closely observed the aftermath of the magical attack as he wondered aloud just how many times the powerful magic bullet had been compressed, estimating that it must have been at least 4 or 5 times to produce such force. Reflecting regretfully on a failed magical attack, the boy stands before a swirling portal while another figure watches from behind, both weighed down by the haunting thought of what might have happened if the spell had struck true. A stern man watched in amazement as the astounded boy exclaimed that what they witnessed was a display of truly innate mana control, and hinted that there was even more to come. Overwhelmed by the sight of the smug boy dominating his battered peers, one frightened boy wondered in disbelief how anyone could be so skilled at overpowering others, while elsewhere another boy grinned with excitement as he activated a glowing magic circle. A mustached man, his face cast in dramatic red shadows, cried out Alfredo's name in alarm as shock and urgency him. As tension fills the air, the mustached man spins around in shock, his eyes wide with surprise, while the protagonist steps forward assertively, determined to initiate a confrontation. Suddenly, as Lady made a striking entrance with unwavering intensity, a man cried out in shocked recognition, his voice echoing through the dramatic, light-filled church. As the boy anxiously spotted Lady at the top of the grand staircase, he exclaimed in a startled voice that she had arrived, his tension mirrored by the nervous anticipation in the air. A distressed boy, his voice trembling with relief, implored Lady to save them as he looked up at her with hopeful eyes. In the sunlit corridor, the man nervously bowed before the two women as one of them suspiciously demanded to know what had happened, prompting him to anxiously explain that he simply wanted to run a basic test. A red-eyed woman, her gaze sharp with curiosity, questioned whether she was truly facing a test. In the midst of the chaos, the defiant main character stood boldly at the center of the stone arena, demanding to know if this ordeal could truly be called a test, while another startled boy called out too, all as magical energy crackled, and several boys collapsed around them. Inside the well-lit room, the resolute woman issued a firm command to gather the trainees and ensure their immediate withdrawal, her urgency matched by the alert attention of her subordinate. With quiet solemnity, the dignified man bows deeply, placing a hand over his chest in a respectful gesture. With tension thick in the air, someone instructed to return to his room, leaving the nervous boy with heterochromatic eyes scratching his head in uneasy reluctance. Astor was instructed to return to his room, leaving him quietly obedient yet tinged with disappointment as he prepared to leave. In a tense atmosphere, the nervous young boy addressed Lady, explaining that he had done his best, but implied that the result fell short of her expectations. A young man, caught completely off guard, stands frozen in shock as he hears that he has been fired. Alfredo acknowledged Lady's summons with formal respect, his demeanor matching the mysterious atmosphere surrounding the grand, moonlit mansion. In the tense atmosphere of the dignified office, Lady reprimanded the remorseful man, who admitted he had gone too far, apologized sincerely, and accepted whatever punishment she deemed necessary. However, the purposeful man in the floral robe, his expression set with determination, presents the ominously glowing red teacup, casting a foreboding atmosphere over the scene. A poised, inquisitive woman seated in an elegant room calmly inquired about the recent sparring match between Astor and the trainees, specifically asking if had offered his assistance. During their tense exchange, the reserved man hesitantly that he had revealed anything, while the anxious woman pressed him for the truth, her uncertainty growing as she sensed something was being left unsaid. He was incredibly skilled at striking others, his energetic blows landing with precision, while his opponent received them with an oddly proud and sparkling expression. In the quiet, serious atmosphere of the luxurious office, the knowledgeable red-haired figure explained to the authoritative man that the magic bullet he had mentioned earlier had also been used during the sparring session that day. The man, his face shadowed with astonishment, realized with awe that the power had been compressed multiple times, intensifying its force far beyond what he had initially imagined. With determination gleaming in his eyes, the young man extended his hand, and as he hinted at the significance of this moment, summoned several swirling dark energy orbs that pulsed ominously in the air. A sharp-eyed, observant woman pondered thoughtfully as she remarked with curiosity that, although she had not witnessed it herself, She had heard his mastery over mana was truly impressive. Standing alone in the center of the arena, the boy remained calm and composed as astonished onlookers marveled that he had defeated 5 trainees with just 1 magic bullet, a feat considered nearly impossible, even for the most skilled mages. In the lavish office, the woman, her tone laced with concern, pressed the suited man about the fate of the successor proposal, prompting him to respond uneasily that it had been firmly rejected. As a hand with striking red nails delicately lifts an ornate teacup from its saucer, the calm and composed figure responds in a pensive tone, remarking thoughtfully on what they have just realized. A red-eyed figure with a jeweled necklace sipped thoughtfully from their teacup, feeling pensive as they decided they would need to reassess Aster and reconsider their evaluation of him. Entering the room with unwavering resolve, the serious young man faced the imposing figure, his determination evident in the tense atmosphere. A poised woman greeted Aster warmly, inviting him to take a seat at the luxurious table, while the nervous boy hesitated, caught off guard by her confident welcome. In the elegant room illuminated by a grand chandelier, the respectful man, alert and attentive, stated that he had come because he heard he was summoned, to which the composed and authoritative MC calmly confirmed that he did indeed call for him, while the curious boy observed the formal exchange in silence. With calm deliberation, a mysterious figure placed a closed box onto the elaborately patterned table, indicating that something important must happen before anything else can proceed. The young man, astonished, stared at the mysterious glowing box as he realized someone had mentioned that Alfredo had promised him a gift. A young boy, his eyes wide with surprise, hesitated before admitting in a startled voice that he had just realized something important. A stern, authoritative man raised his hand, and with a serious expression, issued a challenge by stating that if the other person could endure for just 1 minute, he would reward them with a gift. Caught off guard by the sudden turn of events, he processed the surprising news that Lady herself had prepared things far sooner than he had anticipated. With a reassuring smile, the woman encouraged the curious man to open the mysterious box placed between them, her calm demeanor heightening the sense of anticipation that filled the room. With cautious curiosity, the young man gently lifted the lid of the glowing box, his eyes wide with anticipation as he wondered what secret might be revealed. As the young man opened the glowing box, he was instantly overwhelmed with astonishment and exclaimed in disbelief to himself at the extraordinary sight before him. With a sense of pride, the authoritative man explained that only recruits to the top 5 mage divisions were granted such a rare and glowing magical flower insignia, which now radiated with reverent light from its ornate case. The young man, his expression shadowed by suspicion, reflected that while most gestures of goodwill end with a simple meal, the introduction of gifts often signifies a concealed motive. As the woman with striking red eyes gazed upward, she questioned internally why a wager reward would be elevated from a mid-grade to a high-grade gift, her curiosity tinged with suspicion. With a gentle smile, the woman warmly expressed her gratitude to the boy for his earlier help in the gray zone, and reassured him that their gesture was also an apology for the events of the day, while she patted his head and he ate contentedly beside her. A nervous young man, anxious about the consequences of his actions, asked the confident red-haired woman if eating the mysterious item would require him to join, to which she calmly reassured him that it would not. With unwavering confidence, the red-haired woman firmly affirmed that there were absolutely no issues, then gestured toward the gift as the cautious man watched her intently from across the ornate desk. As the 3 sat around the table, the boy modestly insisted that it was nothing while the humble main character expressed his gratitude, all under the contented gaze of the quiet woman. Delighted by the unexpected reward, the man with the box grinned as the woman across the desk prepared to continue, her composed demeanor hinting at more to come. With a serious expression and intense blue eyes, the young man addressed Aster, stating that he had something important to propose, while Aster responded knowingly that he had anticipated this moment. Under a harsh spotlight, the domineering man gripped the frightened boy's head and forcefully called him by name, making the intimidation impossible to ignore. A confident woman, gently holding the white-haired boy's head, confidently offered to arrange his admission to the academy and asked if he would attend alongside, leaving him listening with cautious hope. As the three sat around the coffee table, the boy explained matter-of-factly that was actually supposed to enroll at the academy last year, prompting the main character to listen with growing curiosity, while the older man remained a silent observer. A red-haired woman, her expression anxious, explained that because he had strongly opposed the idea, everything had been postponed until this year. While quietly eating his snack, the boy reflected in surprise that he hadn't expected someone to retreat so abruptly. The woman, amused and confident, revealed that liked her companion, while the cheerful blonde boy responded with bright acceptance, saying he was fine as long as he was with his friend. The young man, deep in thought, reflected pensively that everything now made sense to him as he stared into the warmly lit distance. The woman, worried that forcing into the academy would only drive him to run away again, watched helplessly as he desperately insisted he would not go, leaving her with no clear way to change his mind. Reflecting in the shadowy room, the boy weighed the advantages of attending the academy, reasoning that in a world driven by blood ties and connections, gaining an academic affiliation would prove highly beneficial for his own ambitions. Feeling uneasy, the male character hesitated as he admitted to himself that although the offer seemed appealing, he couldn't shake the apprehension that accepting it would mean surrendering his independence. In the dimly lit room, the young man thoughtfully told the red-haired person that he would consider the matter for now, to which the other calmly responded that they understood and asked to be informed once a decision had been made. With a cautious glint in his wide blue eyes, the boy hesitantly brought up a new, unrelated topic, expressing his curiosity as he asked a probing question. A poised woman with red hair and intense eyes calmly questioned why Alfredo's proposal to make someone his successor had been rejected, her curiosity evident in her steady gaze. Standing tensely before the ornate double doors, the young man's blue eyes widened in surprise as he suddenly noticed something unexpected. With a confident smirk, the calm and self-assured man hesitated for a moment before suggesting that something more was about to unfold. While the mustached man knelt desperately before the blue-haired boy, the boy taunted him with a smug remark about the value of his knees, prompting the shocked red-haired woman to ask in disbelief if he was serious. In an ominous silence, the mysterious man with the mustache raised his finger in a deliberate, commanding gesture, his serious expression leaving no doubt that he was issuing a silent order. Suddenly, the startled man pressed his hand against the glass, his voice trembling as he called out in alarm upon seeing the boy. As dusk settles and stars begin to glimmer overhead, a majestic, ornate building stands in tranquil grandeur, establishing an atmosphere of calm reverence. In the biting cold, the boy exhaled sharply, his breath hanging in the air as he steeled himself with unwavering determination for what was to come. Seated cross-legged within a radiant magic circle, the young man absorbed the product's mana, and impressed by its potency, concluded that even a mere fraction of its power had already greatly enhanced his own abilities. The male character reflected pensively on how his transformation into a might be affecting his very physique, his intense eyes illuminated by a mysterious light as he considered the changes within himself. Normally, absorbing spirit power results in loss and impurities, but as the hand channels swirling blue energy with a mystical aura, the protagonist realizes with awe that this process is unexpectedly pure and far more effective than anticipated. As the blue-haired young man sat pensively amid glowing orbs, he reflected on the academy and admitted to himself that, although he had considered it before, his answer was already decided. As sunlight streams through the large windows of the empty, ornate room, the protagonist reflects that enrolling in the academy would make it much easier to find a sponsor and offer many advantages, yet hesitations still linger in their mind. A tense young man, filled with unease, hesitated before the imposing ornate door, suspecting that he might be walking straight into a trap. Beneath the dim glow of the ornate hallway, the young man stepped forward with quiet determination and pushed open the grand double door, ready to enter the important room that awaited him. Suddenly, a tense voice demanded to know if he was the one called Astor, causing the blue-eyed young man to turn sharply, visibly surprised by the confrontation. In the dimly lit room, the confident young man stood with arms crossed, his cold gaze intimidating the anxious blue-haired boy who looked up at him warily. The blue-haired boy, growing increasingly annoyed, contemplated the appearance of a platinum-blonde relative and wondered why his family's affairs always had to be so complicated. In the tense hallway confrontation, the dark-haired man firmly rejected the desperate boy's request, leaving the white-haired boy stunned and distressed by the unexpected refusal. The young man, feeling self-conscious and worried, inspected his appearance as he silently critiqued his dingy gray hair. With a sharp glare and clear irritation in his eyes, the young man silently conveyed his annoyance, every detail of his expression underscoring the tense atmosphere. The man calmly remarked that hair color could shift dramatically depending on the lighting, as he gestured toward the boy's dark hair, prompting a sense of curiosity in the young observer. With a playful air, the boy confidently drew attention to his sparkling blue eyes, questioning internally how anyone could possibly find them irritating. With a smug flourish, the dark-haired character snapped his fingers to demonstrate his magic, causing sparkles to appear and prompting the white-haired onlooker to watch with visible skepticism. After realizing his earlier judgment was mistaken, the calm young man apologized with a relieved smile and politely excused himself, while the other, more thoughtful man watched him depart, quietly reflecting on the brief encounter. Anxiously reaching out to the blue-haired boy, the older man apologized and explained that he had come to clear up a misunderstanding that had kept him awake the previous night, while the boy guardedly raised his hand to stop him. A flustered older man, crouching desperately on the floor, pleaded for understanding as he insisted that becoming a butler did not require such excessive humility, and that the situation was all a misunderstanding. With wide blue eyes and an infectious grin, the boy radiates pure delight as he reacts to an unexpected moment of happiness. Suddenly, the white-haired boy spun around, his eyes wide with shock and apprehension, as he confronted the silent, dark-haired man looming behind him. Frustrated, the young man reflected on how his piercing gaze unsettled others, inwardly acknowledging that the look in his eyes was as disquieting as those of a dead goblin. On the checkered floor, the dark-haired boy admitted with a cocky attitude that he had been caught, while the white-haired boy, pointing angrily at him, accused him of lying and acting shamelessly. With fierce determination, the young man confronted the older, mustachioed figure and declared his intent, undeterred by the stern gaze fixed upon him. As the stern man glared down with intimidating authority, the silver-haired young man, gritting his teeth in frustration, remained silently defiant under the heavy tension. An authoritative man warned that he would deal with the protagonist's attitude at the mage hall later, but the protagonist merely responded with smug indifference, while a silent boy watched the tense exchange unfold. In a calm and reassuring atmosphere, the older man voiced his concern, but the confident young man reassured him by downplaying the issue and insisting that nothing serious was wrong. The blue-haired young man, displaying a smug confidence, remarked to himself that the timing was perfect since he hadn't been in the best mood anyway. With determined resolve, the man walked away from the grand, shadowy hall, stating that he would deal with the other person later. A composed older man with a large mustache, introduced in formal attire, calmly acknowledged his role as the head butler. Standing by the sunlit window, the poised young man confidently asked if he could meet with the madam immediately. As sunlight bathes the ornate spires of the grand building beneath a clear blue sky, a sense of serenity settles over the scene. A poised, authoritative figure prepared to write a formal welcome to Astor, their composed demeanor evident as a hand with red nails hovered over the blank paper. As morning sunlight pours through the window, a poised, red-haired woman, intrigued by the news of an early meeting request, wonders aloud if a decision has already been made while she writes a letter at her desk. With composed determination, the red-haired woman acknowledged her order, responding with unwavering seriousness. With unwavering confidence, the young man announced his decision to enroll in the academy, his resolve shining through as he stepped into the light. In the ornate library, a red-haired woman stood frozen in astonishment, her wide eyes revealing she had just witnessed something utterly unexpected. In the warmly lit room, the woman expressed her pleasant surprise at how quickly the man had made his decision, while he confidently agreed to move forward and suggested they begin preparations without delay. In the elegant library, the young man politely expressed his gratitude for the woman's hospitality and assured her that he would make himself comfortable as requested. In the dimly lit, elegant room, the red-haired man peeks cautiously from behind the ornate chair, his wariness evident as he surveys his surroundings. In the sunlit library, the respectful subordinate approached the woman with a worried expression and began to report urgently about the boy. With exuberant pride, the overjoyed man celebrated a victory, declaring with shining eyes that their champion had lived up to all expectations. Amazed, the perceptive woman recognized the fierce passion burning in his eyes and realized with certainty that her instincts had been right all along. An authoritative, fiercely concerned man, his eyes glowing with agitation, confronted someone and demanded to know how they planned to handle the next semester after assuring that the first would be taken care of. As a vagrant from the gray zone, the young man grows increasingly anxious, knowing the tuition will be nearly impossible to obtain, and that his desperation only intensifies his desire to learn more. Suddenly, a radiant and mysterious hand reached down toward the startled young man, who instinctively shielded his eyes from the blinding light. Suddenly, a majestic winged man surrounded by golden coins appears, offering miraculous sponsorship and inspiring hope with his magnanimous presence. In a sunlit room filled with tension, a stern figure reprimanded Alfredo for being too loud, leaving him startled and caught off guard by the sudden admonishment. With a cold, commanding presence, the stern, red-haired woman intimidated the unseen person before her, her disdainful glare making it clear that silence was expected. The woman, her eyes closed in quiet contemplation, reflected with understanding that Alfredo's happiness made sense to her, since he had finally received an acceptance after so many rejections. With a critical gaze, the young man judged the academy proposal as a poorly conceived plan, his intense scrutiny evident in the sharp focus of his eyes and lips. As golden light spills through the ornate double doors, the reason behind Alfredo's unwavering confidence lingers in the air, prompting the contemplative young man to ponder what secret lies beyond. She realized, in a moment of quiet reflection, that the current deception mirrored one experienced by the previous head butler, suggesting a repeating cycle of trickery. Amidst a lavish hall filled with sparkles and flowers, the mustached man in a suit, radiating delight, made a grand and joyful entrance. As the young man walked alone down the steps, the somber atmosphere underscored how others regarded him with quiet pity. Bathed in sunlight, the young man stood lost in contemplation, his thoughtful gaze fixed on the endless sky above. Arriving at the imposing mage hall, the determined young man reminded himself that this was the very place where he had encountered that troublesome figure earlier. With resolute determination, the young man stepped through the grand doors into the mage hall, recalling that this was where he had last encountered the troublesome figure from earlier. In the dimly lit hall, the hooded man seriously confronted the uneasy protagonist by asking his purpose for being there, prompting the protagonist to hesitantly admit that he did not even know the man's name. Meanwhile, the curious boy, unimpressed, shrugged as he questioned the robed figure, while from a distance, the mischievous MC watched with a smug expression, adding a playful tension to the scene. In a dimly lit, ornate room, the hooded man greeted the newcomer with quiet confidence, gesturing forward with a candle in hand as he explained that he had been expecting them and invited them to proceed further inside. A hooded figure, his demeanor calm and authoritative, gestured toward the door as he instructed the wary young man to go right inside, prompting the cautious visitor to approach with heightened alertness. As the boy with striking blue eyes looked ahead in confusion, someone warned him to be careful of his head after opening the door. With wary determination, the serious young man cautiously entered the dimly lit room, the heavy door creaking open as ominous shadows flickered across his face. As torn paper pieces swirled dramatically around him, the young man suddenly realizes the hidden meaning behind someone else's words. Suddenly, as the young man coughed and looked startled, someone addressed him and asked if he was Astor, leaving him caught off guard by the unexpected recognition. In the shadowy room, The mysterious man calmly greeted the newcomer as he held a lit candle, his presence filling the space with an ominous sense of anticipation. Standing beneath dramatic lighting with an intense gaze, introduced himself and questioned the visitor about their intentions toward his younger brother, his tone revealing a mixture of intrigue and authority. The young man, visibly stunned, reacted to the unexpected revelation as he questioned in disbelief whether the troublemaker had just called for his brother.